Australia and the gold area. It's exciting for me. This is Andrew Buxton from Alice Queen. He's the Managing Director of Alice Queen, ASX code AQX. Andrew, over to you. Some exciting times with Alice Queen right now.
Fantastic. Yes, thanks, Kerry. All right, we'll see we're on a pretty limited time budget. We'll get straight into this. The first slide I'm going to talk about is just a bit of a corporate background of Alice Queen. A couple of points about this slide. We listed in 2015. Earlier this year, we basically replaced the board with what we believe is a young and exciting, enthusiastic, aggressive team. Just quickly about those guys. Patrick Gowan's up the top as our new chairman. He's been the company's corporate lawyer for probably about 10 years now, so knows the company back to front, been up to Horn Island quite a few times, knows his way around. Very clever guy, very young guy, but super enthusiastic. Dale McCabe, he was effectively my original partner in the commencement of the company back in 2012. Has been involved ever since we started, raising quite a bit of the early seed money, etc., and still represents a fairly big group of shareholders on the register and runs the operations, day-to-day operations of the company. And then finally, Anthony McIntosh. Now, Ant's a very experienced guy. He had some recent success with Echo Resources, as we're listing there. Many of your viewers will know that Ant started Echo in 2012, at the same time that we started Alice Queen, in fact, and recently successfully sold out to Northern Star for over 200 million. So he's got some good points on the board, knows his way around the investment community over here in the East Coast, and a great guy to have on board. Now, the total shares on issue are just over $1 billion. Company's market cap at current price is around about 30 million. And cash, 30 September, we did a couple of raisings this year, the most recent of which was 7 million a couple of months ago. So we're sitting on around about 8 million in cash, which is a fantastic place to be in. And in terms of major shareholders, we always mention these two guys because it's important to know DAT Capital, who came in September last year, representing just over 7%. Been a big supported the last round very aggressively, which was fantastic. And also Chris Morris, who most of your viewers will know was the founder of Computershare. A great guy, has got a lot of leisure assets up in North Queensland, loves the idea of a gold mine on Horn Island. So next slide. So today we're just going to talk briefly about our two major projects. As we mentioned in the intro there, Horn Island, where we've recently taken on a partner in St Barbara. Pretty exciting times up there. And then the second part of the preso will focus on our North Molong projects in central New South Wales around Dubbo, where, of course, we're chasing giant copper-gold porphyries. So, next slide. So, a bit about Horn Island. What I try and do on these slides, you obviously got the presentation, so you can go and take this away, but I try and give you a couple of points that aren't in the presentation necessarily. And one of the key things about Horn Island that we find it makes it unique in Australia is that it was actually an operating mine back in the mid-80s, and it's only ever a small open pit. But the guys that were operating it were, a little bit loose in their arrangements. They left a really sort of sour taste in the locals' mouths up there. And eventually, after a couple of years of production, they actually went broke, and the whole thing sort of fell over. And the Queensland government of the day was so ashamed of having given them a mining lease. They felt that there was no other way to deal with this collapse of the Horn Island gold mine but to put a moratorium over the whole island, which precluded any further exploration and mining. And remarkably, that restriction agreement remained in place from 1989 to 2014, which is, of course, when we managed to, after 3 years of lobbying, we managed to convince the Queensland government to release and lift that restriction. And we did so by spending a lot of time with the local community up at Horn Island and Thursday Island, talking them through the idea that, 25 years on, a whole generation passed. We're not the same guys. We're different guys. We can do this job properly. We'll be subject to the strictest environmental codes and mining codes. And in the end, it would be a fantastic thing for the local community if we could get the mine back up and running. And so 3 years later, we took that message together with them to the Queensland Mines Department, and they agreed to release it. So in many ways, it stands out in Australia as the most unique opportunity because there's no other operating mine from the 80s that hasn't either been mined out or indeed drilled out over that period. So we basically came across a bit of a time capsule of opportunity. So that's the background to Horn. I mean, there's a couple of points there. We've completed now 20,000 metres of diamond core, and we published a resource of about 500,000 ounces contained in 8 million tonnes of dirt at just under 2 grams. So a good solid foundation there. And then excitingly for us, we had an approach from a couple of majors a couple of years ago to join forces with us on the Horn Island opportunity. And we chose a partner in St Barbara. Now, as most of you will know, St Barbara's market cap's about $2.5 billion or something like that. A good, strong mid-tier producer who operate mines in 3 different locations around the world. And cutting a long story short, after a year of due diligence, they agreed to come in. It's not a huge headline number. They're spending $4 million over 3 years, as you can see there, to earn 70% in all the pieces outside of the existing pit resource. And again, on this slide, we normally just try and explain that there's a real kicker in this deal for us. We think it's a really clever deal and a really great one for our shareholders, in that we keep all of the work that we had done up to the point where St Barbara joined us. And most importantly, we keep that pit resource, the 500,000 ounces that sits there in and around the old open pit. However, St Barbara then spend their money on all of those areas outside the pit. And once they've spent their $4 millionth dollar, they're entitled to keep 70% of whatever they find in the other areas around Horn. But the kicker in the deal is that once they've done that, they then have the option to buy all of the, what we call excluded zones, back into the JV for cash. And that will be done at fair value at the time. So in many ways, we think it's a clever deal because concurrent to their exploration drilling, Alice Queen and our team has the ability to keep progressing the existing resource from inferred level, sort of the early level, up the chain of certainty through to indicated and hopefully even through to BFS. And it's our view that if we can continue to add value to that asset, when St Barbara is indeed entitled to and elects to go to 70%, we get in theory, a good big cash payment to bring the excluded zones back into the partnership, and we still maintain 30% running through to the production of hopefully what will be a much bigger mine in the end with St Barbara involved. So that's the St Barbara deal. Where are we up to right now? I mean, look, it's been a pretty busy year for us. St Barbara got going late last year on their target generation work at Horn. That resulted in the image you can see there, some fairly strong IP chargeability anomalies. And yeah, a few months ago, we just started to drill these areas out somewhat. So there's an interesting twist to this. The red zone that you can see in that image is actually the plan view of the existing resource, so the excluded zone. And it seemed to us pretty clearly that IP anomaly stretches sort of into our area and also into the St Barbara area. So we came up with a plan where we recently drilled 6 holes into that southwest corner of the resource to find the bits that might extend our existing resource, hopefully by a fair bit. And those results have been announced, I think, a week or two ago and look pretty strong. And then seamlessly, we transitioned into the St Barbara joint venture drilling, remembering that it's our team on the ground that operates in terms of both the JV and our own drilling. So St Barbara JV drilling is now, I think, up to hole 7 or 8, seeing all the right things. The chargeability anomaly seems to be working as it should. It's indicating strong sulfide zones and some strong vein density. So fingers crossed, the results will be out probably in a few months' time on the St Barbara side of the equation, but it all looks pretty good at this stage. Just to finalise the Horn Island story, as you would have seen on the map at the start, it is a long way from anywhere, and it's a remote place, the Torres Strait, sitting just off the top of Cape York and in between New Guinea and Queensland. However, we like to explain this slide on the basis that, notwithstanding it's a long way away, it's incredibly well endowed with infrastructure, and it is that way because of its location geopolitically. It's Australia's northernmost outpost, and on that basis, it's heavily equipped with Army, Navy, Border Force and the like. And in fact, the major community up there is actually Thursday Island, as I mentioned, which is just across this channel from Horn. It's about 3,500 people, and it's got, believe it or not, 38 government departmental offices in Thursday Island. So heavily supported by government. And what that means in real terms is what you can see there in that picture. You've got Beautiful all-weather roads through the whole place. You've got ports, deep water ports right there at Horn Island and at Thursday Island. You've got a ferry terminal which transitions passengers between the two islands on the basis that, as you can see, top left, Horn Island is actually the major regional airport for the whole of the Torres Strait. And believe it or not, there's twice daily flights on Qantas Link from Cairns to Horn Island. It's about a 90-minute flight. So, as Dale and I often say to each other, when we say to investors, if you think this is a long way away, we can actually get up in Melbourne, get on a 6 a.m. flight. We can be standing at our mine site by 3:30 that same day. And the mine site, as you can see, is over the eastern side of the island, about 3K from the airport. So what appears prima facie is a very remote place is actually a brilliant place to work with all modern day infrastructure in place. So in terms of the second half of the presentation, I think I'm going quite well on my egg timer here. New South Wales, there is a little bit of a backstory that I like to tell here, and it involves the name you can see at the top there in bold print, John Holliday. Now, John's a bit of a legend around the exploration business in Australia and probably around the world for that matter. And I guess his claim to fame is pretty significant. He was the principal discoverer of Cadia Ridgeway, or Cadia Valley, which, as many of you will know, is a world-class deposit and mine that's operated by Newcrest. John was a junior geo, or probably not junior, mid-tier geo when he found that thing in 1991. And I guess the story is really important here to understand the background, because John was my original partner in Alice Queen, along with Dale in 2012, he was heading up the technical side of things. Once we brought Horn Island on board, he was so impressed with that in the team. He'd retired out of Newcrest, but he said, look, there's an idea that I've always had here that I really haven't completed in my time at Newcrest, and that is something like this. When we discovered Cadia, you can imagine it ended up being 50 million ounces of gold and 9 million tonnes of copper. And he said, so on that basis, of course, everyone, not only from Newcrest in Australia, but everyone from around the world converged on this area, and we're obviously very optimistic about finding another Cadia Valley. Now, John's basically saying there's a simple theory here on any of these type structures around the world, and there's two that spring to mind. These great, like the Molong Volcanic Belt, north-south structure here. There are two. There's the Andean Belt in Chile, and there's also the Indo-Pacific Belt through New Guinea and Indonesia. On any of the worldwide well-known porphyry belts, there are normally a lot more than one major deposit like Cadia. In fact, on both of the ones I've mentioned, there's at least 10 or 12 of the biggest porphyry copper gold mines in the world. So John's theory is pretty simple. If you look at that illustration, he basically said, we've all looked from Cadia Valley to the north, right up to the point of a town called Wellington, which is about halfway through that slide. And he said, we did that, and all the people around the world did that on the basis that that's where the Molong Volcanic Belt rocks that host Cadia actually outcrop. But he said, the theory I've always had is we haven't found anything between there and Wellington. There's definitely not another Cadia Valley on the southern part of this belt. But his theory was pretty simple. On the northern half of the belt, it's almost certain there will be. And on that basis, he basically said, the reason no one's drilled it is because it's from Wellington north, it's got a significant sedimentary cover sequence. So if you want to drill it, you've got to be ballsy, you've got to raise some decent money, and you've got to drill some deep holes. It's costly, it's high risk, but the rewards are so significant, it's probably worth having a crack if you're up for it. And of course, we looked on as new players in the game, thinking that sounds like a bloody great story. So we pegged all that ground there, you can see in the red. And what I'll do now is I'll just piece by piece talk you through the three sections of that tenement package. And the final one, which I know is probably what everyone wants to hear about, is the Boda East area of Yarranduri, the southernmost tip of that trouser leg. So, next slide. So, starting at the northern end of the Molong package is what we call our Mendooran tenement. Now, this is exciting because this is actually where we started in this area. And originally, back in 2015-16, we formed a joint venture with Newcrest. John Holliday and the team went back to their old team. We joined forces with Newcrest. They did $1 million worth of target generation work on this particular tenement. It came up with 8 Newcrest-approved, Newcrest-style, Newcrest-scale porphyry copper gold targets, and they're represented by those little black dots. The only hiccup was that in the end, the Gunu State Conservation Area, depicted in green in the illustration, meant that drilling and exploration is all fine, and even mining is fine in the end, but there's a set of environmental conditions that you have to get through to get the drilling done. And Newcrest eventually, after doing all that work, decided that was going to take them too long. And so they left the JV, which at the time we thought was a bit disappointing. But of course, the advantage was they'd already spent $1 million. They generated the target. So we looked at it and went, well, why don't we just do the work and get the environmental approval through? And 2 years later, the short story is Dale, who's sitting off to my side here, the exec director of Alice Queen, spent 2 years specifically focused on that deal. And about 6 months ago, we had that approved. So what we're sitting on here is, as I want to remind all the viewers, 8 of the best looking targets that Newcrest could find, 8 Newcrest style targets, scale targets, that are now ready to be drilled. So we'll be in there hopefully over the next few months starting drilling in that area. Yarranduri, yes. So second tenement down, so the middle section of our package here. This looks a little bit messy and a little bit busy, this slide, but the key point about the busyness is there are so many targets in this area that we've generated. It's so exciting. They're literally our targets everywhere here. So we've done, I think, probably 8 holes so far into the Yarranduri northern tenement. And so far, we've only got results just starting to come through. And unfortunately, you're probably going to hear this from a lot of people in this area. The labs are so backed up. There's, I think, 30 rigs providing core into ALS at Orange at the moment. So there's a big backlog. Results are starting to come through for that drilling that we did some months ago now, which do look interesting. So, yeah, it's exciting times. We'll see how we go with those results once they come in. Now, just to close everything out here, Boda East. So the story with John Holliday comes in here again. I mean, from 2014 onwards, we were marketing a story which we thought was fantastic. We're going into, try and find the next Cadia, as many people have said they're going to do. But our story was, we thought, quite significantly different on the basis that we've got the guy who's discovered the first Cadia. So who's better to talk to about finding the next one? The guy that found the first one. So we've got the best guy in the business, and we reckon the best ground in the business. And then all of a sudden, after 4 years of marketing that story without too much success, bingo, Alkane made a discovery at Boda, and that's a significant discovery. The discovery hole you can see written up the top there, 1,000 metres at 0.5 gram gold. And bang, the lights went on in this area. So in simple terms, just to close this out, the mag anomaly that you can see running along the western side of our boundary there is actually 700 metres away from the Boda discovery hole. And if you put that into the context of Cadia Valley, which is 25 square kilometres or 7 kilometres long by about 3 kilometres wide, that's a huge mineralised system. And for those of you who don't know, Cadia is really not one deposit, it's 5 deposits in a little cluster. So what we're hoping here at Boda East is that we're going to be either finding another little part of the Boda system or the core of the Boda system. We don't know just yet. What we do know from our first results in the first hole is that it is the same mineralisation. It's from the same package, the same suite. So far, just to bring the viewers up to date, we've got 8 holes completed. Results for one have been announced. That's some of the core that you can see from our first hole, which is the stuff that you want to be seeing. So in summary, yeah, we're well into the program here. We've just recently had another 10 holes approved. Dale told me this morning, which is fantastic. And we're going to keep testing that whole area down at Yarranduri, along the Boda East boundary there. So in the end, what we say in the summary of the opportunity with Alice Queen is that you've got Horn Island up north, which is well on its way to becoming a mine. Its value is underpinned by the existing resource and having a partner like St Barbara in there spending pretty much all of the money from here on in. And down at Boda East and Molong, you've got, sure, very long odds type exploration, but it's big rewards exploration. It's elephant country. So for the investors in Alice Queen, we reckon we've got the best of both worlds. And that's the roundup. Kerry?
Andrew Buxton, it's a great story. We've got a lot of questions here. And just to those people that are listening at the moment, if you do have a question for Andrew, please put it in the Q&A. I will try and get to as many as I can. So let's kick off, Andrew. I think I know the answer to this, but I'll let you answer it. What's your relationship with the local native title groups on Horn Island? Are they supportive of the work you're doing?
Indeed, yeah. Well, so we're normally a little bit light on in our exploration with this one. But the answer is it's actually really unbelievable. Without getting too carried away, Dale, who again is sitting off to my side here, Dale and I both have Aboriginal names that were given to us by the elders of the Cowreg people. Now, you don't get that sort of thing very easily. You have to spend a lot of time with these guys to build their trust. And that whole period of, I suppose, getting them back on board after what was a fairly dirty story back in the mid-'80s with those other guys took a lot of effort, a lot of time on the ground. So, yeah, we're very close with the Cowreg people, very close with the elders. We spend a lot of time with them. And, yeah, it really couldn't be better. The corporate side of it is we actually set up a joint venture vehicle with them called Cowroo Gold. So we named the company after their spiritual totem. Cowroo means kookaburra in their language. And we took on the symbolism of the kookaburra in our corporate ID. And we gave them a 7.5% free carry in the operating vehicle. So they're invested on every basis up there, spiritually, politically, and corporately. So it's a very tight relationship, yeah, one that we're very proud of.
Yeah, and that's fantastic. And I guess they can see the upside for as the mine starts, and it helps them. Andrew, getting on to the next one, which of your projects are you most excited about achieving positive results from in the coming programs? I think they're both exciting.
Yeah, they are both exciting. I think it's one of those ones that it's a great package because it's sort of polarizing, I suppose, in terms of which investors like which one. But I think the summary here is that it's more likely that, I suppose in terms of excitement, what we really would hope for is a giant hole like the Alkane Boda discovery hole. I mean, 1,000 metres at 0.5 gram. I did say to someone in a presentation yesterday, without getting carried away, and I want to say this with all the disclaimers, that hole 7 that's on your screen there, when they announced that, it added 150 million to their market cap in about a week. So for a company like ours, it's capped at 30 mil at the moment. We reckon fair value is probably around 50 mil, just based on our own sums. But imagine that if you've got something like that, that would be just a complete game changer for everyone involved. Now, that's entirely possible because we're in that zone right next to Boda. It's all the same stuff. So, we've got to believe that can happen. And back on Horn, I mean, Horn's, it's unlikely you're going to get anything of that sort of calibre or that nature because it's a different type of system. But it's exciting just to watch it develop with St Barbara in there, their technical advice and their financial wherewithal. That's going to become a mine at some point. Just a question of how big it's going to be.
Question of how big it's going to be. This is from a question from a non-gold specialist investor, and I like these ones because not everybody is a geo. Are you happy with the recent gold levels found? I'm assuming they're talking about Horn Island. Yeah,
the most recent drilling. Yeah, it's a good question, I reckon, because again, to be an explorer, you have to be the ultimate optimist. And so, of course, in the back of your mind, you're secretly hoping for, in the context of that type of intrusion-related gold system, we always joke around, wouldn't it be great to get 100 metres at 10 grams or something like that? That wasn't to be, and it probably never was going to be. But what's exciting about the most recent results is it's kind of boring in that it's more of the same. And I suppose in many ways that boring nature of more of the same is actually the best possible result because there's no surprises anymore. We know where it is. We know how to find it. It's really just a question of leveraging our knowledge now into more and more tonnes and ounces. And that can't be a bad thing. So I hope that answers that gentleman's question.
I think it did. Final one, because we're running out of time. Yep. Can you tell us if you have any plans for Prince of Wales?
Yes, that's a good question. Yeah, so one map we've taken out of this presentation because it does get a little bit tricky, but in simple terms, if you can imagine, Horn Island is part of the Torres Strait group, which is 300 islands. The 40 southernmost islands are known as the Cowreg Archipelago, so the country of our partners. 5 of the most sort of closely knit islands in that southern group are all part of a tenement that we, again, named after our Aboriginal partners. We call it Kowalagal, which is their name for that area. And it covers, so there's one tenement that covers Horn, and then there's a second tenement, Kowalagal, that covers another 5 islands, including the biggest island in the Torres Strait, which in Aboriginal it's called Muralug, and what we call is, in the English people call it Prince of Wales Island. There is gold showings on all of those islands, historically, little pits and shafts and so forth from the early 1900s. So the answer to the question is yes, we will get to that at some point soon. It's certainly covered in the JV with St Barbara. So yes, we will do something on that at some point, but always be, I suppose, prudent in recognising that really the real action here is on Horn, and until we've exploited the obvious, low-hanging fruit, it's on the agenda, but it's not top priority until we really exploit all that's available at Horn.
Horn's the most exciting thing at the moment for you guys. I think it's great. Andrew Buxton, we've run out of time, my friend. So great to see you, and thank you. Look at that. Perfect. Always on time. Right. Thanks, Andrew. Great to hear the Alice Queen story. And as I said to you guys before, the ASX code is AQX. Check them out. Talk to you soon.